So we were wondering whether there will be enough human beings around, but it looks like a good guesstimate analysis are almost exactly filled. Today we have Prof. Chao. You see her background, but if I may, right? Very candidly, I first met Prof. Chao when I was transiting out of DSO to the university. I had a trip to Shanghai. I heard about global heat health information network forum in Hong Kong. So I told my family, you can get back to Singapore, I do a detour. And I joined that forum, and it opened my eyes and said, oh, this heat problem is beyond the soldiering environment where I came from. So that was the first touch point, and then the rest is history in recent years. And there's an exponential increase in terms of the requirements to more heat beyond just the military. So that's first touch point. The other thing you might not be aware is not shown here. Prof. Chao is an excellent artist. She draws exceptionally well. She showed off some of the skills when we were in Leiden, in the Netherlands, and I think she specializes in drawing. Gorillas.
Animal drawings.
And
big cats, my favorite.
Black and white, that's amazing. If you have a chance, so ask her to show a couple to you after this. But besides that, you see credentials, and often it's not just in urban heat health, but I came from beyond myself in the ministry with MCC1 sports. Often how many medals we win, right? We also reference Hong Kong because of the environment, the people, the culture, a lot of commonalities. So yeah, there's a lot to learn. And last year, when we rolled out the National Heat Stress Advisory, very glad to see our friends from MSC, NTU, NUSC Cities, SMU, including Singapore, work package B, are all here, excellent. So it's good that we are coming together to learn. And she asked me whether our past experiences of running such seminars. Honestly, this must be our first official, unofficial seminar series. Hopefully, this will not be a one-off, and we will do more of this. So she has back of slide. I asked her to do a self-intro. She asked that you ask her if you feel comfortable along different segments of the talk. I told her Singaporeans sometimes will not be as vocal as you wish, right? So you can keep all your questions, and the end is okay to us. Okay, if not, you can take a platform or yours. Chao.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you. It's my honor to come to here. Actually, I've been to NUS many times. Before COVID, always say once or twice a year have a visit here. But after COVID, it's the first time. Yeah, so you got the CV, but you may feel very strange why a person from architecture particular interest in the heat house. And also, I just shared a story with one of the audience here. When I went to the American Meteorology Society annual conference in 2007, there's a group of people from the Joint Office of Climate and Health from the WMO. They are the people of the Global Heat Health Information Network. They present the idea they want to create this kind of global network to enhance the knowledge, communications worldwide. And by that time, I feel very strange because the people there, sitting there, they are from geography, from the public health, from the medical schools, but none of them from the architecture. So I hands up and asked a question, said, okay, you got all talents, but you are talking about the cities, right? You want to create a more healthy environment, healthy living conditions for people, but you don't have experts from the built environment, from architecture. Then they extend that invitation to me. They said, why not we invite you on board? So you can see for this, even the heat house, this issue, actually is talking about cross-disciplinary collaborations. And not single person can do these things, especially changing climate change is very complicated. So that is part of my journey and also academic career. Before I came to NUS, actually I also involved in the Cooling Singapore project funded by Create. So I work with ET Zurich people and also US people on that for quite a few years. And also I share our experience from Hong Kong, how we work on this heat house, urban heat islands, comfort study, and also the design planning, implementations, etc. Yeah, okay, let's move on. So for today's lecture, I want to focus more on this kind of heat house related research and how we conduct that in Hong Kong and how we gradually, step by step, to do this kind of research. So in 2012, the IPCC have a special report. They're talking about the extreme situations, and they mentioned that the length and frequency of this kind of intensity of heat waves would likely increase over the most land areas in the 21st century. By that time, we are just about to apply for a big grant. So that is why we try to get this kind of global information and understanding. And then we also find that WMO has a document showing this global picture, talking about the last decade from 2011 to 2020. They mentioned that that is the warmest on record. And then we move to the recently. If you read the news, last year, the 2023, actually the warmest on record. And when I give a lecture at our university, I have to update this kind of figures over the last 4 or 5 years. Almost every year when I have a new class, and I said this year, or the last year, is the hottest one. And then you can see the trend line here is keep on going up, okay? But we have to zoom in to see the details. For example, here they mentioned that in 2023, all 365 days were above 1 degree Celsius, and almost 50% of the days were above 1.5 degrees Celsius. And globally, we want to have this target. We want to limit the temperature rise within 2 degrees by 2030. And now it's already 2024. And the last year, you can see the record here is already above 1.5 degrees Celsius. So globally, I think there's a lot of scientists, we are not really optimistic. We think it's very difficult to achieve this target, i.e. limit the temperature rise within 2 degrees Celsius by 2030. So if we have this global warming new era, and then the heat house issue definitely will be the hot issue and very important topic for us to consider that. And this is a news article from The Guardian. It mentioned that rising temperature will cause more deaths than all infectious disease. So this is a global major study, they found that. So that is why we have to consider what are the potential risks and also invest to mitigate this kind of risk. So that is why very important one is we are not only talking about the research, we are talking about implementation, how we do the intervention to reduce the potential risk properly. Okay, and this is 2023 at the global level. And you can see we already marked the first time 1 degree Celsius was exceeded every day of the year. And then if you go back to China, our country, an all-time high for daily maximum temperature in 127 national weather stations across China. They already have this kind of high temperature record. And if we move to Hong Kong, we can also see the highest record for annual minimum temperature and also the numbers of very hot days. We also have this kind of record-breaking results. And in Hong Kong, we also checked the weather records over the last 100 years. So you can see here, this is an accelerating increase in the urban temperature. And especially the last 2 decades, the speed of the rising temperature even faster. And in Hong Kong, we have a local heat indicators. One we call it very hot day, the other one is hot night. When we define the hot days, it means the heat maximum, i.e. the daily maximum temperature above and equal to 33 degrees Celsius, and hot night is about 28 degrees Celsius. And this data showing the cold days and also very hot days and hot nights at the early 19th century, 20th century. However, if you refer to from 1986 to 2015, you can see the cold days decreased dramatically, while the hot days and hot night increased dramatically. And here, we also do the projection. In the future, actually the hot nights will increase dramatically up to 140 nights. So imagine in the summer, traditionally in Hong Kong, we talk about 3 months. But now, every day in the summer, you have to turn on the air conditioning. Every day is hot nights. And later, I will explain. Hot night even worse. It will cause extra, this kind of health burden, health impact to the local people. And also, if you calculate the both very hot days and hot nights, almost half year will be the summer situation or this kind of extreme hot weather situation. And very often when we talk about these facts, this data, and general people may say, okay, just a few degrees higher last week, what is the problem? The problem, again, you have to put into the urban area. So this is Hong Kong, and have anyone know the picture, the background picture? Have you ever watched the Transformer 4? Yeah, so that is the point they take a shot. Okay, next time come to Hong Kong, you can also say that. And so this is one of the famous spots showing the high density. So although Singapore is known as a high density city, but you really need to experience this kind of extreme density in Hong Kong. So we have the data showing the high density. One is the population density. Approximately is 6,000 people per square kilometer in the metro area. Well, the building density is the domestic plot ratio is about 8 to 11, and average building height in Hong Kong is 60 meters, i.e. about 20 floors. That is on average. I came to Singapore this time. I live in the Pan Pacific Orchard, and the roof level is 15th floor. And I saw already very high. But actually, my residential building, my unit located on the 26th floor. Okay, but that is very common situation in Hong Kong. And the most this kind of public housing real estate, the building floors are up to 60 or 50. Yeah. So welcome to Hong Kong. Okay. And yeah, so that is. But in Singapore, actually, we cross-compare the situation. The average building height is half, around 30 meters. Okay. If you talk about Beijing, I saw some visits, probably from mainland China. We talk about 23, 21 meters on average for the building height. Okay, then this is the Hong Kong downtown areas, and we call the building here. You can see the buildings. They have very small building footprint, but very high building height, the many floors. We call it the needle building or chopstick building, more like chopstick. Okay. And because of that, we have a series, this kind of environmental issues, all caused by the high density, high rise, this kind of urban context. So poor ventilation, hotter urban area, higher heat stress, and also we have less direct sunlight, etc. And so they cause us a lot of problems. Okay, now the previous slide showing all those situations, and this is indoor. In Hong Kong, 30% population lives in public housing. I know Singapore probably 70 or at least 50, right? So you have more this kind of public housing real estate compared to Hong Kong. And outside is already density contact, but inside we also have an extreme density situation. Because if you compare this kind of unit square per person, Singapore is people in general, you need larger space. In Hong Kong, we are the smallest on earth probably. Yeah. And then we have about 0.2 2 million people in the subdivided units. I guess here the subdivided unit for you is very new term. I can show you. So in good old days, in Hong Kong, we have this kind of town house buildings. Normally it's like the 6 or 5 floors for the whole building. And originally there will be 2 units or 2 flats per floor. But because of lack of housing, especially the public housing, so the poor people, they only can afford to rent a very small room. And the house owner will divide the units, originally it's 2 right here, into the sometimes 6, sometimes up to 8. So that is why some units, they don't have window. And because the poor people live in there, so they cannot afford to turn on the air conditioning. So you can imagine indoor situation could be very bad. So that is why back to the 2018, in the summer situation, one of the local news articles report this. They mentioned that residents in Hong Kong tourist neighborhood struggle to keep cool. And here I show you some data. They said the outdoor is already very high, but indoor you can see up to the 42 degrees. And before this lecture, I went to the chamber managed by the Dr. Jason Lee. He showed me the future temperature in Singapore is about 40 degrees Celsius. But here, this is the real data in Hong Kong, indoor, already reached to the 42 degrees Celsius. And also the indoor temperature, 80% of time was higher than the outside. So you can imagine the inside is even hotter, right? So that is why the mom have to shower her baby 3 times per night. Okay, and he also mentioned that the baby constantly have this kind of fever, the sick, etc. So potentially all caused because of the built environment. Yeah, so they have to shower 3 times, and the whole family have to escape from their home and stay in the McDonald's until the midnight, and they come back just for sleep for a few hours. Okay, so that is why it gives us a motivation to conduct this kind of research. In Hong Kong, traditionally we also have the public health researchers do a lot of this kind of heat health studies. According to their publications, you can see the data here. They detect the behavior change, mild symptom discomfort, help seeking, hospital admission, or even the palliative situations. But the problem is, the traditional public health researchers only tell you, okay, every degree is kind of categorized, what is the association of admission, etc. But how this kind of information be used for planning, design, and also how this kind of information can be used for the warning system, for the weather service. So that is why we have a new project which is called Increasing the Resilience to the Health Impact of Extreme Weather on Elderly People and the Future Climate Change. The whole project, we have 3 parts. The first part is talk about climate. This one we want to downscale the climate change projection to the district level. Because at the global level, there's a call for this kind of city action. Although there's a common agreement, we know there's a global warming, even global warming. But what is the real action can be taken at the district level or city level? So, but they need this kind of data, right? So that is why the task 1, we want to get the data ready. And we also have a panel with Hong Kong Observatory. So they will use our findings to update their warning system. So that is why here we mentioned our outcome with the urban scale climate data set for weather information surveys and also the health impact assessment. And then for the task 2, we talk about built environment. And the most studied heat health, now most of the time they adopt the outdoor temperature to evaluate what is happening indoor, this kind of health situations. But for this project, we link the outdoor and indoor together. So that is why we have partners from the planning department, housing authority, and also the building department The housing authority is more like the URA, planning departments also, they share similar roles and service like the URA in Singapore. And so they, the team B, they will focus on this kind of mitigation strategies, create guidelines on urban planning and design for improving this kind of situation. And the team C, actually they will downstream to the community level. So they partner with NGOs, and especially the Senior Citizen Home City Association, Hospital Authority, so they can see how to use their findings to develop this kind of adaptation plan for supporting service and also etc. the community engagement, etc. Yeah. We already finished the part one. So as a scientist, when we do the study, the first step is always to do the literature review. You need to understand what is the state of art knowledge, what is findings, what is the latest popular best technology in the same field. So we check the literature and found out there's global interest on the heat wave and heat risk. So we collect the information from the Web of Science. There are about over 2,000 papers. You can see that there's a dramatically increase. Increase because that is early, just maybe 2 months or 3 months of that year. But suppose it should continue, okay? And we check the data from 2012. And also we use this AI, VOS viewer to detect what are the hot terms or hot keywords in the literature. And we found that people constantly interested in urban heat island, small comfort, urbanization, climate change, land surface temperature, etc. And if we zoom in to see the details, papers, findings, I found there are 4 issues. So we can see the lot of publication, they already have a call. They mentioned that we have to, for the heat wave, we have to think globally, but for the real action, real implementation, they have to be act locally now. And second one, you can see the very big interest areas talk about urban heat island during the heat wave. And there's a combination of urban heat island and heat wave. Actually, the combination's effect on health even worse comparing just the heat wave situation. And many people interest about urban heat island, but problem is they adopt the land surface temperature as the indicator to measure the urban heat island, not the air temperature. So that is some difference, maybe underestimation or overestimation of the real situation. So that is why when we do the studies, we want to have a spatial temporal pattern understanding, and also we have to consider what is the situation in the daytime and nighttime, etc. And then, so similar thing like what I mentioned, if you want to evaluate heat-related health impact, so which indicator you should select, and also how you define this kind of hot spot and hot spell for your city. And then for the heat risk and implementation, we are not only considering just the temperature, but also we have to have a comprehensive understanding of the risk, i.e. how you evaluate heat hazard, heat exposure, and heat vulnerability. So that is the things before we start the project. Okay, so the first question, because I lead the task 1, so I work with Hong Kong Observatory. One of our target is trying to update their extreme hot weather warning system. So the first question raised by them is how we define the hot spell of Hong Kong extreme hot weather. The Hong Kong Observatory running this extreme hot weather system since 1999. About 20 years, they never updated. Because at the beginning, they never saw that this issue. Back when I communicate and talk with Dr. Jason Lee, people think the the local citizens, no matter Singapore or Hong Kong, they get used to this kind of hot, humid situations. And if you check the climate change projection for this region in future, just only a few degrees higher. So they never solved that big issue. However, because of recent record-breaking, because of the health issues, there's an increasing interest and attention from the Hong Kong observation. So the first question is, if you want to update this system, how we define the hot spell of Hong Kong extreme weather? So we have to adopt the different definitions according to the existing extreme cold weather indicators. So like the evaluate impact of different types, length, occurrence, timing of extreme cold weather, all-cause mortality, and also identify the difference and interactive effect of extremely hot weather conditions between the daytime and nighttime, determine the vulnerable populations during the extreme hot weather event, and also suggest what are the typical heat wave definition in Hong Kong, and estimate its lag effect on all-cause mortality. And then we adopt the local extreme hot weather indicators, define the length like this, and also define the occurrence in timing, whether there's 0 days in between, 1 or 2, 3 days in between, more than 3 days in between, etc. And also define what are the consecutive situations, etc. And then running the statistical model, and we found out increased mortality risk is relative to normal days, and hot nights are associated with increased mortality risk. This result is very different from European and also American results. And potentially we think all because of high density urban context and also the urban heat island effect. So that means the hot night can cause even trouble to us. And then we also see the prolonged heat event associated with a higher mortality risk. And then a combination of this kind of consecutive very hot days and hot nights has a stronger effect on mortality risk. And here you can see we have this pattern. And later we, in the Hong Kong Observatory, adopt this pattern to define the prolonged heat wave in Hong Kong. And also we found the female and also the elderly citizens are the most vulnerable people if they have this kind of prolonged summer situation, prolonged hot night situation. So in Hong Kong, so this is the first time we found that hot nights actually is a very important indicator we should pay attention. And then we provide this kind of weather tips through the collaboration with Hong Kong Observatory. We mentioned that the citizens should increase their awareness and preparedness for this kind of extreme heat, especially during the nighttime. And also the elderly, young females, etc. And then we have the second question. At the beginning, I already mentioned how we detect this kind of pattern. I.e., is there any spatial variation between very hot days and hot nights? Because if the common knowledge, people think, oh, if you see the sun, then that area should be the hot. But in the night, it seems everywhere the temperature should be similar, right? There's no problem. But this is not the case. So that is why we conduct this kind of linear regression analysis modeling and to detect the spatial pattern of extreme hot weather conditions in Hong Kong. And also, based on this statistical model, we can also determine which factor of the built environment potentially contribute to the spatial vulnerability of the extreme hot weather. So that means potentially we can provide a recommendation, suggestion to the governments, say in future, if you want to create a new task, this part of the planning elements or parameters you should consider. So we adopt the weather stations record, and also you adopt the land use regression approach to create this kind of mapping. In the meantime, we also adopt the land use road network, urban morphology, population data into the modeling. And then we can generate this kind of spatial pattern. And this talk about very hot days, and we adopt the indicator, which is called accumulated hours of the year. So you can see the highest one, more than 205 hours, 50 hours per year. And the right area here is most located in the rural areas, in territorial areas in Hong Kong than the downtown area. But this is the daytime situations. Yeah. And we can also identify the hotspot in the daytime. However, if you check the whole night, the spatial pattern differs from very hot days. And you can see now those high density urban areas turn out to be the hotspot areas, like the Causeway Bay, Mongkok Central. And also we found that a few new towns, surprisingly, also the hotspot areas. So that means previously the planning department, they don't know this situation, so they create a new town and now it turns out the hotspot. Then potentially they also create the problems. So that is why very important one from this study is to tell people very hot days and hot night, the spatial pattern, the temporal pattern, the hotspot are very different. So for example, if your outdoor activities in the daytime, right, you have to refer to those, you have to be aware of those hotspots areas. But if you're elderly people in the nighttime, then you also need to pay attention of those hotspot area in the nighttime. And then we further this study by creating this kind of heat risk mapping. For this study, we adopt the triangle risk assessment, which is also recommended by the IPCC. And it mentioned that we have to consider the hazard, the vulnerability, exposure and vulnerability. And for this, we consider like the social demographic data and also the population density. So from this study, we want to identify where are the hotspots of extreme heat risk. Because if you want to provide this kind of district level action, you should let people know, is it because of the weather, or is it because of the dense population, or is it because of social demographic issues? So we need to identify the potential reasons for the local government to take a further action. And the results showing that if you refer to the heat hazard over the 15 years, you can see no matter it's the daytime or nighttime, the hotter area is getting bigger and bigger, and also the hours, accumulated hot hours is getting more. For the heat exposure is not big change because the population in Hong Kong not really changed so much. But the vulnerability part actually is getting worse. Because actually in Hong Kong, although we have high GDP, but the gap between the rich and the poor is bigger and bigger over the last few years. So that means the potential heat vulnerability and heat risk is getting worse. And this is the first time we're showing the spatial information of heat risk. And later, because of the map, we are very easily to persuade the government to do something. Because we already identified which area have problem, what is the problem, and what kind of resources we need. And then we continued this study recently, and the previous map showing the situation from 2011 to 2015. And then if we update the data, and we can see it's getting even worse. And this is the daytime, and the nighttime is the same, yeah. And we have even worse situation at airport, because there's a lot of new developments. And then we came to the question 3, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of global reports on heat health mentioned that there's a combination effect of urban heat island and also during the heat wave, and the potential health risk can be even worse. So in Hong Kong, we want to say whether we have this kind of situation, and what are the urban heat island related health impact. So if you don't know what is urban heat island, usually if you have a downtown areas, because of the dense buildings, artificial pavements, and also the industry activities, in general you have a high temperature during the night. The surrounding area, like the rural areas, because the small capacity lower than the downtown area, so in the nighttime the temperature can drop very quickly. So that is why if you compare the rural areas the downtown seems to get hotter. So they call it the urban heat island effect. And potentially, the local report mentioned there will be a greater effect because of the heat wave interact with urban heat islands. But how much? So that is the question we ask. So that is why we conduct this study first to understand what are urban heat island and cool island effect during the extreme heat in Hong Kong. And we conduct this to comparing the extreme heat weather situation, non-extreme heat weather situation, and check the difference. And also we map out the pattern of the urban heat island degree hours and also cool island degree hours. Cool island means in the early morning. In the early morning, the downtown areas, because the temperature drop so slow, so they may have a lower temperature in the downtown areas compared to the rural areas. So they have this urban cool island in the early morning. For the most of the time, urban heat island happen in the nighttime. And then we, following that study result, we conduct the urban heat island effect related mortality, try to understand whether the urban heat island will cause actual this kind of heat death. And then we found that if we classify the entire city, this kind of urban heat island issues into the 3 levels, like a high urban heat island intensity, moderate, and also lower. And we can find that the urban heat island effect, especially the moderate and high urban heat island effect area, have a significant increase of mortality risk. And also for those high urban heat island area, they demonstrate almost double the risk of moderate this kind of urban heat island area. While the low urban heat island area have no temperature related mortality association. So that means the density can kill people double, right? So that is why, based on that, we provide a series of recommendations, say local government have to factor the urban heat island into the assessment of heat action plan, and also when they create this kind of heat house warning system, they have to factor this, and how to consider that at the community level intervention, especially when they create new towns. And then also they have to consider those areas with large proportion of elderly residents. And when they do the long-term initiative, they have to consider all these findings. And then, so through the collaboration with Hong Kong Observatory, they already helped them to update the extreme hot weather warning system in Hong Kong. And apart from that, we also have very close collaboration with various departments of Hong Kong government over the last nearly 2 decades. So we create all different kind of technical practice guidelines, etc., try to implement this kind of urban climate information evaluation into the planning and design system. And so based on the findings, Hong Kong Observatory already update their system. So for example, like the precautions to better suit this health need of elderly adults and persons with chronic conditions. And also they have special weather tips on this kind of prolonged heat, which I mentioned earlier, like the 2 consecutive very hot days and 3 hot nights in between. And last year, they also have a new extremely hot weather warning when the temperature is 35 degrees or above. This is mainly for the outdoor labors, outdoor activities. Okay, so almost the end of my presentation. You may ask, okay, what is your next? Next collaboration with Dr. Jason Lee. So that is my purpose. Yeah, so I work involved in this kind of global collaborative research project, report, etc. One of them is the IPCC report released in 2022. I mainly contribute to the chapter 6 of the cities, settlements, and key infrastructure. There is a quite long report, but I strongly encourage you to read that report. But for the key message, I want to take those important points. They mention that if you want to do any kind of adaptation effective adaptation strategy measures, you definitely need this kind of scientific evidence-based assessment. So, for example, if you want to persuade the Hong Kong government to do the good action, we need to provide the map, we need to present the data, we need to have this kind of scientific understanding. And for the climate change, especially like the city's action, they have to downscale this climate change projection to the city level or even to the district level. One of our purpose of this project is to provide the data at the district level. And also, if we want to persuade the policymakers to make a good decision, and very important one is we need to say what are the potential risks and the future scenarios. And so they try to guide them to make the right decision. And then for this kind of implementing adaptation to local policy is very needed. And from the architecture, we are talking about the new towns, we're talking about buildings. They stay there at least 30 years, 50 years. For new town, probably forever. But you cannot make any wrong decision. It will then the negative consequence will last forever. That is very dangerous. And then we also need to have this kind of data information sharing. So in Hong Kong, I think one of the good things is if you want to have this kind of study, it's very easy to collect the data or get the data from the government departments, but some countries may not so easy. And the last one is to say what are the potential multi-benefits, especially like the social, economic, and human deaths, and also how you develop this kind of adaptation plan for your own city. So that is why earlier we have a map, the risk map. But once we overlay the city facilities, like the community center, the clinics, etc., we found that it's mismatched. The most hottest area, they don't have this kind of facility. So that is a way for us to persuade the government. Say, now you can see the map, the problem area, but you don't have any facility. But in the future, you have to consider that. And also, right now I work with Hong Kong Red Cross, similar like this one, because we have a map, so we can also say, cross-compare their existing community engagement and service, see whether their service already covered those problem areas or not. And also we help them to develop this kind of heat action plan for the Hong Kong Red Cross. And recently, there's the news from the falls. And this morning, I also have a discussion with Dr. Jason Lee. So they mentioned that the future of cities may be hot, humid, and deadly. So the hot, I think there's a common sense and common agreement on that. But people may not really pay attention about the humidity part. But this also can cause a big issue. I know some people here from the public health area, so when you do the research, probably you also know that. In Hong Kong, recently we conducted a study, try to understand this kind of so-called compound extremes, and we adopt the absolute humidity and air temperature, try to understand what are the changing climate pattern of the compound extremes over the last 6 decades. And we can find that in Hong Kong, we classify the whole year into the different types of the compound stream, like the compound hot and white, hot and dry, and also the cold and white and cold and dry. Unlike Singapore, probably you have very stable weather condition through the whole year. In Hong Kong, we still have a cold season. Recently, it's a cold season. And so in the winter time, the temperature can drop, the worst case drop to nearly 0. But in the summertime, it's quite like Singapore, 35, 32 maximum temperature. In the nighttime, it's about 27, 28, something like that. But in the winter, we have this cold situation. Although we have global warming or even global boiling, but still we have a cold season. So for this study, we want to understand the compound extreme. So for this, we find that the compound hot wet event increased largely, especially during the 2010s war period. Why we need to pay attention on that? because in Hong Kong, I think Singapore sometimes may also have a similar situation. Indoor, especially if you have high humidity, you have mold. And mold can cause a lot of issues, right? You also have similar experience, right? And so mom or your family members have keep on cleaning the toilet, etc. Very hotly, very humid season. Yeah. And so this potentially, they have a lot of health issues. And also, we found out compound the cold dry events become less frequently, especially during the cold period. And then the built-up area has more frequent compound extremes with high humidity than rural areas. So surprisingly, although in our common knowledge, we thought if you have more buildings and you don't have the vegetation, you don't have plants, natural landscape, suppose you have less humidity. But it's not true. And because of the human activities or because of this dense environment, actually you have a high humidity. Okay? And then we also check the event frequency, intensity, and also mechanism, potential implementations. And so that is why in future we want to do more this kind of compound extremes related health impact analysis. And if you're interested, you can go to the Google Scholar website or Research Gate. We have a lot of publication there. And if you want to have a short version, then the book chapter is already telling our story. Whole Hong Kong, this kind of urban overheating, heat-related mortality story in Hong Kong. Yeah, so that is my last slide. So the last year is the hottest one, but we expect this year even worse because of El Nino effect. So your contribution is extremely important. Thank you so much. Thank you.
That's excellent talk. A lot of gaps, right? So there's a lot more. But before I open the floor for questions, I just want to emphasize a few more. As you heard about, this summer has arrived. I just got news yesterday from Thailand. And then the summer will arrive end of this month. That's many months before as compared to the north. Those who came from Japan told me that the cherry blossoms are already out. Usually it's late March, April. So the world is going bonkers, give us a lot of impetus. I'm very impressed when she just get and she can recognize people from Mainland China. I think she's referring to Hong Kong. Joke aside, I reminded me, I invited Sonali from NTU because in the last conversation that we had a chat and it was briefly mentioned, we had a good conversation with our French counterpart looking at the refugees. And we educated different from the displaced versus IDPs. It's a whole new ball game for us, but that's where I encourage us to talk more. Don't be confined in your academic bubble. And today, besides Prof. Chao, you can still the bundle, that is a unique opportunity for us to cross-talk with folks from NUS, HBTR, PHRDC, as I say, SENU, in Singapore, NTU, NUS cities, and also MSC, our ministry folks are here also. Also, if you have time after this, do stay back a little bit, try to share more about your work and arrange another session to hear more on the refugees, migration, some more building, and you'll be surprised. It's true, understanding another domain. It's quite same domain, right? By another government that can inspire us to undertake our own work too. Before we go up at the end of Q&A, we'll move to the next part. Please stay back. We want to take a group photo. So Prof. Chao can remember us and come back more often. Also, I'll open the floor. I'll start by making a comment that McDonald's concept as a cooling shelter is very, very interesting. Maybe we can take it another level. We serve McDonald's or you are that will be that's better. Please keep to one question per person for now. I'll let you ask your second question if you have time. Who wants to start the ball rolling? Seth, let's go.
Thank thanks for the talk. I actually come from a Hong Kon background, so I was interested in the first study that you talked about, where you looked at mortality.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you also looked at morbidity.
Yeah. I didn't present it today, but we do have team members who on this kind of ability, like hospital admission, dispatch of ambulance cars, etc.
And it was similar to admission, as in it was higher on the hot nights and exacerbated.
I think, if I remember correctly, we found out the potential, the hot night cost is kind of very serious issue in terms of the heat house impact.
Thanks. If I may, just that inspired me to ask one for you asked is what the medication because Jerry, one of our PhD students, is looking at the impact on medications that potentially can compromise our heat loss ability. Is that the factor, or you think there's scope to factor that in perspective?
I don't think we consider that in our study, but I do believe that is very important. But actually, I mentioned a little bit in this morning meeting. So in this project, we have people from psychology, from the medical school, from the nursing school, from public health. The Professor Helena Fong from the Chinese University of Hong Kong, he's a psychology professor. He detects this kind of pattern, including the physical health and mental health for the elderly during and also before this kind of extreme heat event. And her finding is very interesting. Her finding showing that if the elderly people have this kind of physical health issue, 1 week before they already have the mental health issue gradually accumulate. Eventually they have physical health issue. So her recommendation based on her findings is the government and the NGOs need to provide this kind of more community engagement and also intervention before the worst situation. So that is why, like not McDonald's, but in Hong Kong right now, NGOs we persuade them to work with local developers. And because the big company every year they need to submit the ESG report. One important part of the report is climate resilience and also community engagement. So they have to report to the stock market, say how good things they made, and yeah, so they have this kind of obligation, or they have this kind of promise. So that is why now we work with Hong Kong Red Cross, say how to approach those developers and let them to share certain kind of space, so the NGOs can run this kind of community engagement and the air conditioning areas. So the mental health part of the elderly people can be improved a lot, and then eventually we hope they have better situation.
So which the mental impact is more sensitive, right? So that happens first before. So we shouldn't wait for the physical degradation of the water to conclude that is a problem. Some things happen beforehand.
I have a question about the first aid or the like how you would in Hong Kong work with mitigating the potential death toll in high situations. So you showed in the very beginning that there are really high rises. You showed that the temperature inside can actually be hotter than the temperature outside. And we know that there are specific areas in Hong Kong that are at greater risk than others. So my question is, in your specific heat health warning systems, what are the advices that are given? Is it just drink hot warm water? Is it put a fan on? But we know that if you put a fan on and move hot water or hot air at a certain level higher, you might actually increase the risk of heat injury. So it's an open question, but do you see a future where would you evacuate the elderly down to a cooling center? It's a logistics question for an urban design with your expertise. What do you envision happening in the near future?
Thank you. Very big question.
Yeah.
But I try to start the big question from the big picture.
Yeah.
So every time when I give a talk like this, I always say everyone should involve in this kind of adaptation plan. Not just only rely on the government resources or government support. So that is why I work with NGOs. I said you have to consider your own action plan and how you map out your existing service, resources, your plan, and how you link this and create your own action plan. For the government side, because different government, for example, like Singapore government or Hong Kong government, they have different mechanism or different system. So for us, we're very close to work with this planning department and building department, hospital authority. So that is why we sue them. They want to say how to improve their design, their policy decision on the midterm plannings, public housing will, estate development, etc. But at the individual level, we do have this kind of recommendation through the Hong Kong Observatory. So that is why when they release the warning message, they have general message to everyone. And also they have specialties for the elderly people and also for the people with chronic disease. So we have multiple channels or multiple ways to do this kind of adaptation plan or action plan.
Chao, who is the investigator or the secretary for heat health advisories in the Hong Kong Observatory? Who is the main ministry or agency that will shop this advisory?
Right now, there is an intergovernmental panel on climate change, but because some people here from China, so when they have this kind of political agenda to talk about carbon neutrality by 2060, the whole nation. So that is why I think the last 5 to 6 years, almost every country, every city mayor or province government, they put all efforts on the carbon neutrality part. But I think the last 3 or 2 years, and because of the extreme weather events, for example, like last year, Beijing even hit by typhoon, and so they got this kind of heavy rainfall, the record-broken events in Beijing, and also they have typhoon. And in the central part of China, like Zhengzhou, Henan province, they also have a similar problem. Even for us, Hong Kong got used to the typhoon and was supposed one of the safest city on board. But last year, 18th September, we also have this kind of black rain, and it lasts very long. Whatever the intensity, the dense duration, all break the records. And so they cause us attention on the navigation, not just only the navigation. I think there's a new trend or new call. It means when you do the navigation, you have to consider what is the effort you can also put on the adaptation. So eventually, adaptation, navigation, even resilience, 3 parts should be put together, one effort goal.
Hi. So first of all, thank you for a very interesting talk. I come more from the physical aspect of geography. So on the mapping globe presented here, previous work is very crazy. I just wonder nowadays the most commonly used method is the climate zone method by Subtropical. So how this NCZ methods, how you see it fits with the other kind of mapping, and how you see the future of climate risk mapping?
Thank you. If you check the literature, I think my team contributed about 50% of local climate zone related studies. So on one side, we developed the data, local climate zone data for Chinese cities, and also we use the data in the projection, like the urbanization situation in Mainland China. And also we work with a modeling team, so they can use this kind of projection data in climate change projection. They factor the urbanization. And also apart from that, we try to explore what are the potential implementations of the local climate zone in the navigation side. For example, like the carbon emission inventory, how you factor that. And also if you refer to details, we also consider the local climate zone data into this kind of mapping, evaluation modeling part. In the future, I do believe the local climate zone data is very useful data for the climate change projection modeling part. But all in all, it's the data, and how you use it and how you explore the potential implementations. So that is one of our research interests.
Thanks, Prof. I just have a question on the use of different indices. So I know the Hong Kong Observatory and most of the studies now they focus more on air temperature to define like extremely hot weather warnings, very hot days, hot nights. But then I realized that the Labour Department last year put out this new advisory based on the Hong Kong heat index.
Yeah, it's 35 degrees Celsius. That one.
That's in the based on Hong Kong heat index.
No.
Okay.
The Hong Kong heat index actually is developed by Professor Abby Chen from the Public Health School of Chinese University. By that time, they want to have a new heat indicator to examine the heat health situation in Hong Kong. That indicator has certain limitation because they use the death record and the mortality data to evaluate heat health impact. So that is why it has certain limitation when Hong Kong Observatory introduced this indicator. For the general public, later they introduced the 35 degrees Celsius because on one reason is if you check the historical weather records, we found that in Hong Kong we have more and more higher temperature records like the 35 degrees Celsius. So that is why we have to consider whether they want to have a special new simple temperature indicator to call this kind of public awareness of extreme cold weather situation. And the second one is if you check the government documents released by the Labour Department, it seems very simple notice, even not the regulation, it's like a leading document talk about heat issues. So that is why last year the Labour Department worked with Hong Kong Observatory and also asked based on our findings. They said, okay, initially we want to have a new indicator, try to protect outdoor labor safety. So that is why last year we introduced this new extreme hot weather indicator, 35 degrees Celsius. When we work with Hong Kong Observatory on updating this kind of extreme hot weather warning, we also do a literature review, try to understand what is the common practice from different countries, different cities, when they establish their warning system, like what kind of indicator they are considering, and what is the mechanism, how the urban, like the map office, work with different departments, and when they release this kind of warning message, should they also consider what are the potential health impact? For example, like the French government, they do once the meteor fronts produce this kind of weather forecast for the incoming week, and then the health department will quickly run the estimations in whether they will cause huge damage in terms of the mortality or death. If that is a potential case, then they will have a different levels this kind of action. They will involve in like emergency room, nursing home, elderly center, etc. So they have different action plans. Yeah. So that is exactly. If you talk to the different stakeholders, or if you even talk to the different departments, do they have such kind of awareness? Are they ready? Do they equip with a proper action plan to deal with this kind of situation? Yeah.
Those are all based on air temperature.
In Hong Kong, right now, we only consider air temperature, but we are still in the process of trying to compare the different this kind of heat stress indicators. To be honest, I think Singapore will have a similar issue. The most indicator are for the European case, American case, but for the subtropical or tropical climate, a lot of indicators are not directly applied to this kind of climate situations. Yeah. Okay.
I'm a PhD student as well, and I have been, for my PhD, working on the similar work, but in Singapore. And I was actually just about to ask you to think that like that humidity is something that we've been trying to consider in the metric. And instead of using air temperature, I'm trying to figure out a temperature of
previous study, like the most papers I mentioned today, is we only adopt the temperature as indicator. But in the future, in the next, we're considering like a combined stream, like the air temperature plus humidity, temperature plus the pollution. Yeah, so that is why we are really towards the combined streams. Yeah.
But that humidity is something that is important.
Definitely. Yeah.
And could be, because at the moment, I haven't been able to find enough resources on how to improve humidity unless we have variable temperature details. And I was just curious, maybe later, if you have any resources for how to integrate humidity in similar calculations.
So I think, I don't know where is your case study. I think you need probably check the historical data and define this kind of threshold. For example, even we talk about temperature here, and if you do the literature, you can see literature review, then you can see the different cities, the different research teams adopt the different recognition like the extreme heat. Like even they have 90 percentile, 93, 92, and sometimes they daily maximum, daily average, minimum, etc. So it really depends on the city situation and also study purpose. For our purpose, because we want to improve the existing Hong Kong extreme weather warning system, they already have these two indicators. So that is why for us, we not really adopt 95, 92 percentile. We adopt this kind of local extreme cold indicator.
Yeah, in Singapore, you might not be used to WBGT, the red temperature. So it comes with humidity, and radiance. Question? Buddy?
Thank you so much for the talk. Just have a question. So I think from your study, that it shows very clearly that it affects mortality, especially so in terms of vulnerable and elderly population. And I was just wondering, because and you also did more research into social demographic factors, and so that it's clear that heat has impacts different individuals, different ways and different vulnerabilities. And you also discussed about improving the current heat output system, including other environmental-based factors. I wondered what can therefore you move towards also introducing individual-based factors that can also influence these vulnerabilities.
Thank you for your question. Actually, your question relates to a very important issue, which is called climate justice and inequity. So we just submitted a proposal and try to extend our effort on this kind of inequity, climate justice during the heat wave. So apart from the elderly people, like the news article, actually the mom, the children, and the vulnerable population, because the poor social economic situations. So yeah, we are working on that, but right now we don't have the results. But I do believe there is a great need for this kind of population.
Thank you for your talk, Prof. I just want to ask about these high-risk groups that you already observed, and some of the low-income individuals who are living in really unconducive environments. And what do you see happening to them in the next 10 years or 20 years? Are they going to be able to adapt? Are they able to see enough support and take home? What do you think they will find?
Actually, I think that this group of population, they have very dilemma situation. In Hong Kong, like Singapore, we have this kind of government subsidized private housing. And some people, but they're on the list, but they're waiting for like 6 years or sometimes even longer. So that is why they cannot afford the private housing. They want to rent this kind of subdivided unit. It looks like cheaper, but actually if you calculate the per square feet, this kind of price is even higher than the luxury flat unit. So there are several efforts from the government side. They said to speed up this kind of private housing development. But right now we have this kind of transition, temporary housing for those people. And from NGOs, for example, like the Hong Kong Red Cross, last year they got donation from HSBC. Yeah, so they try to help those people replace their home furnitures and also redesign the inside so they can have more ventilation and more better living conditions, etc. So the multiple efforts happen from different perspectives, different areas.
Thanks for the presentation. I actually resonate a lot because I was living in Hong Kong for the last 4 or 5 years.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Yes, Hong Kong Baptist.
Baptist University.
Okay.
Actually, I just wanted to ask, like the UHI maps that you put out, and then there was the sort of expansion of the areas, and then especially the hot nights. I'm wondering, is that due to expansion in the urbanization in the new towns? Because at the same time, I understand that the development in Hong Kong is rather slow. So is it due to like increasing, like making even higher flats, or increasing the density of the flats and everything? Like what are the reasons?
Yeah, Hong Kong actually is, I think it's like Singapore, it's like a well-established city. We do have a new town planning development projects, but not really at a very fast speed comparing to the neighbors like Shenzhen. But very funny is, in Hong Kong we have rural station, this kind of weather station next to border of Shenzhen. And then we found that because of fast urbanization in Shenzhen, those few stations we cannot call it rural station. Okay, but so we do have this, but in the next I think 3 decades or 5 decades in Hong Kong, we have a huge new town plans, new territory areas will be developed. So in future, that part of urbanizations will be very fast. So based on findings, we want to show the potential problems of the different areas. So in future, we hope the government won't make any same mistake again in those kind of new town plan. So that is why, not me, some other local researchers also involved in this kind of new town planning, advisory board, etc. And in Hong Kong, we have a new artificial island, very big one, next to the Hong Kong airport. And one of the interesting findings is that if you create a new artificial island like this, but actually they will decrease the downtown wind speed by 0.5 meter. And considering the summer situation, that is potentially could be a huge health impact.
Long Island outcome.
Questions?
Very good question. So, is there any study that showed structurally and more using an urban city and portion of its rural and whereas people was against high flow, increased airflow and because people like the overflow because they shift the surrounding space.
Thank you for the question. Before this heat health study, and actually I also focused my effort on the urban ventilation corridor plan, and mainly for mainland cities in China. And by that time I read a news article, it said the developer, when they sell their units, flats, they always said upper floors is better because they have more ventilation. And they even have terms, they said if the floors above the 15 floors, then they have a more air, some air quality, something like that. But back to Hong Kong, I have one slide showing all the summary of the all different technical notes and guidelines, etc. Actually, one of the technical notes we work with the planning department is trying to see how to improve this kind of sustainable building design. So in Hong Kong, we have new terms which is called building mobility. So when you create a building, when you measure the building facade, the building design, you have to tell people how much percentage of the facade is empty, is transparent, so they can let wind go through that. So we have this kind of regulation.
I think we have a similar concept here. I think it's easier for new projection by the quality older quantify the impactfulness of that 101 strategies that we researchers have proposed. I'll be there.
Really.
Okay, not yet.
Not really.
Something to think about. Because our policy side of thinking, okay, now we've got so many solutions, right? Need to quantify the impactfulness of each of these. I cannot push everything. So tell me which one is the most impactful.
Unfortunately, I think unlike the Singapore government, sometimes they may have this political agenda or focus, and then after say 5 years, another generation of the government they have a new difficult. It's very difficult. So that is why we always think the Singapore government is good. So they put this garden city, right? And everything is green, green, green.
If I may also use this platform also think about, we could discussing it to share some of discussions. Other sectors, they are still untouched that require some. Our pets, for example, any pet lovers, huskies should be banned in Singapore. I always think that's already evidence to convince for us to be able to take care of some of these pets. Because they can sleep right like they do, they can sleep the pet owners, some of them. The other part I thought about Hitia, we also very contextualized and we have a lot of cultural impact here. So we will have a discussion with NTU counterparts. We are aware there's a Chinese medicine center is doing NTU. So as much as we can advocate, but they told Chao was more rigorous, right? The traditional Chinese medicine will give you another set of advisory, and then this elderly will get confused. So hang on, they say drink cold water, but the TCM say cold water, I won't stay away. So how? So we should anticipate and bring these two doctors together to have a consensus so that advisory can be more streamlined. Last call? Questions? Oh, Jim. Ask you food related.
No,
Okay,
actually, thanks
Jimmy is
for
a nutritionist.
thanks for the presentation. So I do come from another specialization, which is nutrition. So actually I'm very curious what got you started in this area of research. Because I think this room has people from very different disciplines, even though we are focused on area of stress and depression. But I always feel that when I talk to someone from another discipline, which is like yours, it's always very interesting to know what got you started. Yeah, so that, I don't know, I think it's just my question.
I can answer that for you because I
Say whether you're
for
always
example, I want to be
correct
an
one.
artist. My parents say artists will bring friends. So since you like to draw, right, the closest is the architect. Am I correct?
Part of the reason.
There's usually a reason what got you started and then what got you kind of to continue this
Although I was trained to be architect, but I'm kind of, I would say, very, I really need a strong evidence to convince me this proposal is good or not. Although I can do very nice drawings, etc. But so that is why when I finished my undergrad study, I moved to Hong Kong, and I really want to learn this kind of architecture, science, technology. So later when I do the proposal, at least I evaluate this kind of design proposal, I have more strong, more confidence in that proposal. So that is one motivation. And second one is I think I'm just very lucky because when I applied the PhD program and my PhD supervisor said, okay, now I got this government project, I need a PhD student to work in this project, so you are the one. I really literally asked him why I should work on the urban climate and my junior or my other PhD classmate work on the rural village, this kind of housing design. He said, just you got a chance. But I think I'm very lucky. But actually, that is the beginning part. But now when I kind of independent researcher, I lead my research team, I have this international collaboration. I think as a researcher, we are not only produce paper. So every time when I talk with my students, I try to persuade them to have this kind of passion and interest. So for example, when you have to go to the society, you have to talk with people and to understand what's their need. And also I talk with my boss. He said, why you spend so much time? I mean, you can produce more papers, right? But I said, I don't think that is meaningful. for us, because I work with NGOs, I work with planning departments, I work with governments, so I know their real needs. And I also do the literature review, the scientific one, the government documents, etc. So I know the real knowledge gap. So I hope every paper if I publish, there is the real question from society, from the government side. So that is, say, I always talk to my students, you not just only do the paperwork, but very more important, you need to ask yourself whether this is meaningful.
Okay, I think with that, shall we put our hands together? If I may, on behalf of the team, try to be very sustainable. So fancy stuff that are not a coin, so you remember us.
Okay.
Yeah, so where's my which way to say hi?
Hello, it's here. Wait. Here? Okay.
On behalf of the team, just thank you.
Thank you.
I'll take a photo.
Oh, this way.
Okay, okay.